Hi, I'm Brad Geddes, the co-founder of Adalysis, which is a PPC management platform for Google and Microsoft ads. Now, I've been working in paid search since 1998, and over the years, I've seen the ad formats change significantly. And with each change, there's new opportunities and challenges, and how advertisers can effectively manage and test new ad formats. Now, earlier this year, Google changed their default ad format. So today, we're going to look at the format and see how to really create them and test them to ensure you're working towards your account goals. Now, when Google first launched in 2002, we had a standard text ad, often called an STA. It's a single headline and two descriptions. Now, we had this ad format for 14 years. It was really hard to test because when you look at a heat map of where users look at ads, they look at the headline significantly. That's their most time. Then the display URL, where are we going? And then everything else. And so in 2016, Google launched ETAs, or expanded text ads. We had two headlines, and later we got a third headline, which doesn't show much anymore. But now we could really test because where users look, those headlines, we had a couple of them to really get into. And then Google launched RSAs, responsive search ads, in 2018 to very, very little adoption, mostly due to poor performance. But earlier this year, Google made it the default and only text ad format you can use. So we need to really look at why they didn't perform, what are the challenges with them, and then how do we really make them work, right? So we say, what's an RSA? Well, you give Google assets, often headlines and descriptions, and Google mixes and matches them for various criteria, and then renders a combination to a user. Now, the combinations are all the different ways Google sort of mix and match the assets. From a user perspective, what a user sees, an ETA and an RSA look identical, right? The way the ads are created are different, but from a user standpoint, they're the same. So we could really look at ETA data in thinking about how to create RSAs. Now, there was a lot of pushback about RSAs from advertisers, and it was because they didn't perform. When we stacked up and look at ETA versus RSA performance across every metric, ETAs won in everything. So you're wondering, well, then why would Google do RSAs? Well, there's a lot of reasons. You can get some machine learning into play. You actually don't lose any features. You can make an RSA behave identical to an ETA. So there's a lot of reasons for it. But from an advertiser standpoint, most of the reasons they don't perform is a lack of data. The machine can't figure things out. Poor ad group organization, and then just reusing the same ads without varying them by ad group. And that's, again, an advertiser problem. So we're going to fix all these. So when you give Google assets, you're giving them some headlines, some CTAs, some benefits, some authority statements, whatnot. The machine doesn't have any context of how these should look to a user. And so what happens if you've got 4 headlines related to your ad group and 6 calls to action, you could have an ad that's just 3 calls to action as every headline. Or you could have another ad that's got a feature or benefit. It doesn't actually say what you do. The machine doesn't know context. This is something you know as a marketer. And so it's got to go through the bad combinations to understand the good ones. So there's ways of sort of jump starting this we're going to get into. Then we look at ETAs. We have years of data looking at ETAs. And there's a formula that works really well, right? We have a headline related to the ad group keywords. Hey, when they search, they say, I'm looking for this. And your ad has to say, I have this, right? So that's that first headline of relevancy. Then we have our second headline, often a benefit or a call to action. And then headline 3, which doesn't show very often really just supports the second headline. So we know this formula works. We have to think about how do we kind of apply this logic to an RSA, which we'll get to. Now, the second problem is really Google created, right? Google came out and said, hey, give us your keywords, give us some assets. We'll mix and match these together to make the best ad for a user. Now, this sounds great, and this is an actual ad group. So this advertiser had keywords like NYC dog-friendly hotel, downtown NYC hotel, Times Square hotel, hotels near Java, it's just keywords. And then they made assets that sort of echo their keywords with a few other things like book today, find your dream hotel, etc. Now, when someone searched for a New York City dog-friendly hotel, the most common combination they actually just viewed was hotels near Javits. When someone searched for downtown NYC hotel, the most common combination they were seeing was dog-friendly, right? And so what happens is Google is not very good at saying the user searched for this. We need to find that asset and then show it to the user. When this company, this advertiser, took those keywords and made them each their own ad group and then made the assets match the keywords, suddenly they almost tripled their conversions. And so this is why you still need good ad group organization even with responsive search ads. Then next we need to ask ourselves, just where's the user in the funnel? Are they high stage funnel? Are they consideration stage? Or are they buy stage? Is this a retention based ad? Because this also dictates the other types of assets you want to add to the ads. So for instance, features and benefits. A feature is a bullet point list of true facts about a product. Kind of boring, but really important in comparison shopping. Benefits are what you get out of the product. So when we think about the funnel, high in the funnel, no one knows who you are. It's what benefits. When someone's doing comparison shopping, it's about features. When they're ready to buy, it's about what they get out of it, right? So it's important to look at the funnel and say, how do we use features and benefits? Can you write a good call to action? Unfortunately, when Google launched responsive display ads, they had a drop-down box of calls to action. Shop now, subscribe, download, call now. They're boring, right? So looking at your calls to action, saying, how do we make these more intriguing is another really important aspect. But also, we need to know where's the user in the funnel. Because if they don't know about us, we can't say, buy right now, right? That's a more discover about this, learn about this. Then they move to shop, find, download, and then if they're ready to buy, you definitely want to say, schedule something now, call us right now, buy this product, right? So matching the CTA to the funnel still matters for even with responsive search ads. So when we look at conversion per impression winning ads for ETA layouts, make the assumption headline 1 is related to ad group as they generally are with ETAs. We say, what combination does best? Well, mixing calls to action and benefits, by far the best. Second best, mixing calls to action and features. So this is why we often arrive at those statements of we really like ads that are related to ad group, call to action or benefit or authority statement, and then let's support headline 2. So when you're creating RSAs, consistency of asset type is really important. If you have one line related to ad group and 9 calls to action, well, the machine's going to go and create a lot of ads that are only calls to action because there's only one line related to the ad group. Conversely, if you have 8 lines related to your keywords and 2 calls to action, you're often going to end up with mostly headlines that are related to the ad group without a call to action in them. So often we think about, we want 2 or 3 lines related to the ad group, 2 or 3 calls to action, 2 or 3 USPs, authority, benefit statements, and be consistent in that usage. So the machine has the assets correctly to work with to render better RSAs to users. Now, where we start getting into problems, it's possible combinations compared to impressions. So if you have 15 headlines and 2 headlines are displayed, that's 200 head combinations. If 3 headlines are displayed, that's 2,700 combinations. When we add the 4 descriptions, we're at 47,000 combinations. So if you create an ad with 15 headlines and 4 descriptions, if your ad group receives 10,000 impressions a month, which is a pretty good number, after 4.5 months, each combination will have 1 impression. So if you want at least 100 impressions for statistical significance, you really should have more, then it would take you years to achieve this. Now, Google doesn't actually serve ads this way. They don't say combo 1, combo 2, combo 3. They make guesses, right? A machine that doesn't understand humans, right? Humans are better at understanding humans, makes guesses in what to show. So what happens then when you've got 10,000, 15,000 impressions is the machine's got to make guesses and often doesn't get it right because it doesn't have enough data. It doesn't have enough feedback information to understand. And so this is a really common stats to see in an ad group where you've got your top ad by far the lowest impressions, but your best click-through rate, conversion per impression. The ad with the most impressions isn't a winner by everything. Right? This ad group almost tripled its conversions by pausing 2 ads. And so you need to take some control when you don't have millions of impressions for the machine to learn. So step 1, you can pin lines. And so when we say earlier, RSAs just give you more options than ETAs. If you pin one line to headline 1, one line to headline 2, and one line to headline 3, you have an expanded text ad. Now with pinning, you have a lot of options here. We could pin 3 different lines to headline 1, saying, hey, Google, these 3 lines are related to my ad group, and pin 1 call to action. We're seeing more options for related to ad group, but we have a single call to action. We could pin 2 lines to each. We could pin four lines to headline 1 and headline 2 and not pin headline 3. So there's a lot of ways you can create a framework for the RSAs. If you say, hey, Google, these 3 lines are pinned to 1, they're related to my ad group. These 3 lines are call to action or maybe a call to action and 2 authority statements, pin to headline 2. Well, you've got 9 combinations now, not including headline 3s. So the machine still has some options to work with within your framework. So what we're really thinking about is how to reduce combinations. If we have 15 headlines and we pin 1 line to position 1, we now have 14 potential combinations instead of 210. If we pin 2 lines to position 1, well, now we're looking at about 26 combinations. If we pin 3 lines to 1, 3 lines to 2, and 3 lines to headline 3, when 3 headlines are displayed, it's 27 combinations. When 2 are displayed, it's 9. And so what we're really doing here is we're thinking, how do we get enough data density, right? So the machine can learn what combination works for what kind of user while still building the framework of how we know ads work. And that's where pinning can really jumpstart the machine of using the human understanding of how humans interact with ads, along with machine learning that's going to look at the data and make better combinations. Now, as you start pinning, you're going to see ad strength go down. And so a lot of advertisers don't want to pin because they see low ad strength. Ad strength is only related to Google's ability to control your ads. It is not related to your click-through rates, your conversion rates, your quality score, your CPCs, your impression share. So the only time it matters is if there's 2 RSAs in an ad group with different ad strengths. The RSA with the higher ad strength will get served more often. That's it. In fact, what we often see is that when there's 2 RSAs in an ad group with different ad strength, the lower ad strength has better conversion rates and click-through rates, usually because it's pinned, or maybe there's less assets involved, and so there's less combinations. The machine can actually learn better. So with pinning, I mean, you could pin 2 to 3 lines to headline 1 for ad relevance and not pin anything else. You could pin 2 to 3 lines for every headline. Right? You can make themes of saying, we want to test discounts versus prices. So let's pin 2 of these lines to headline 2 and ad 1, and 2 of these lines to headline 2 and ad 2. See how they do. So it gives you a lot of control with pinning where you're reducing potential combinations. But again, if there's still hundreds of combinations and you only have thousands of impressions, the machine still has a lot to learn. Right? So you can build your frameworks for ads while still using machine learning. So then how do we test this, right? That's what a lot of this comes down to is, all right, we understand the framework of building these. How do we learn from our own data? So we have a couple testing methods, right? We have A/B testing, which is known as our single ad group testing. And this could be 2, 3, 4 ads in an ad group. You'd only have 3 active RSAs. You could have call onlys or others in the ad group. And what we're looking at is, hey, here's my ads. Which one gets the best metrics for my targeting method, right? Be it keywords, audiences, whatever. So you're finding the best ad for an ad group with single ad group testing. Then we have multi-ad group testing. This is our chance to really learn about user interaction with ads. And this is often where you're making hypotheses, right? Should my non-brand keywords have my brand name in them? A good question. So what if we take 2 lines in an ad group and add 1, we put a couple brand lines in headline 2, add 2, we don't put our brand in headline 2. Now let's do this in hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of ad groups. So we're not learning about this for a single ad group. We're learning this for all of our non-branded keywords at once, right? That's what multi-ad group gives you, those really good consumer insights. Now, sometimes you'll want to do this pinning in headline 1 if you want to test, should we use geographies in our headlines? Generally, that's a headline 1 thing, not always. So again, you could pin 1 to 3 headline 1s with geographies. A second ad, 1 to 3 headlines 1s without geographies. Test them out. So we look at the most common testing methods, right? Theme testing. We've got one ad focused on something, discounts, location, authority. A second ad, right, focused on price, USP, benefits. And so we've got 2 different ideas going on in our ads. And then we're often going to pin 2 to 3 lines to headline 2, but it could be headline 1 as well, or even headline 3, but they don't show very often. And we're looking at how a theme does. You can do this in a single ad group or in a lot of ad groups at once. Pinned versus unpinned. So this is a common way to say, who's better, right? Let me take 15 lines and 4 descriptions and give them to Google and say, all right, here's your ad to play with where we have a really high ad strength. It'll get more impressions than the other ad. You play. And then I'm going to take the second ad and I'm going to write 3 lines related to the ad group, 3 lines that are call to action or authority statements. Pin my first 3 to headline 1 and my other 3 to headline 2. Maybe make some supporting ones for headline 3. So this ad has 9 to 27 combinations, a lot less, still uses machine learning within our framework. All right, Google, what does better, right? The one the human made a framework for or the machine just doing everything? You have the trust but verify. And this is often when you're giving Google a bunch of assets and saying, all right, Google, go to work, learn stuff. And then it's going to, render ads and you have lots of combinations, but you don't know why, right? Is the best click-through rate being shown the most? Is the best conversion rate? Is it the lowest CPA? You don't know why. Google gives you very little feedback into how each combination does. So then you can see the combinations. You look at your top combination or maybe 2 by impressions. You take that, you pin it, right? So the top combination, headline 1 pinned, headline 2 pinned, headline 3 pinned. All right, so now you're going to see the overall RSA data versus the top combination, understand how it's being served. It's really common in industries that have either a lot of B2B and pre-qualification needed, a lot of regulation, insurance, banking, etc., legal, or areas where you have really good copywriters. So say, we're going to fully pin everything. We're just going to remake ETAs and just do a standard test like we used to do for the last 6 years, right? And even in that framework, you don't have to just pin one headline 1, 1 headline 2, 1 headline 3. You could pin 2 to 3 versus 2 to 3 and just make frameworks, and you're testing the frameworks across either a single ad group or multiples. The control aspect, though, is much more common when you have regulation. So when we look at these, right, unpinned versus unpinned, you need a lot of impressions for this kind of testing to work. If you have 15 headlines and 4 descriptions, right, 47,000 combinations. You have a second ad with 47,000 more combinations, right? So now we're looking at, more than almost 90, or a little more than 90,000 combinations. So unless you're getting hundreds of thousands of impressions a month, common millions, you'll never get good results in these types of tests. Unfortunately, it's the most common way of doing RSAs, though. So this might work in some of your ad groups that really do have crazy amounts of traffic. It's usually not a good idea for smaller accounts that just don't have a huge amount of data, B2B accounts that need pre-qualification. So then our second, right, is we take our unpinned ad and our pinned ad. Say, we're going to make this pinned ad, which could be 2 lines pinned to each position, could be a single, it's up to you, right? You can have your framework versus just Google as a whole. And this is really you making a framework that could potentially use some machine learning versus full machine learning. How does that look? Fully pinned versus fully pinned. This is one of the most common tests in enterprise companies and B2B companies. It's really interesting. In our system, we have millions upon millions of ads. And when we look at the usage of pinning, in-house teams pin a significantly more number of times than agencies do. Right? Agencies kind of live in the Google rates us and this and that, and they often throw a lot of unpinned things together. And in-house companies pin a whole lot more. But fully pinned just means that there's at least one asset pinned to each headline position. So you could do a task where you've got an ETA experience, headline 1, 2, and 3, each one pinned. Then you can make another one. Right, here's 3 lines pinned to headline 1, 3 lines pinned to headline 2, 3 lines pinned to headline 3. And you could also interpret this task as an ETA or a fully copyrighted ad, exactly the experience you want the user to have, versus potentially 27 combinations if we do 3, 3, and 3, where we're combining machine learning within a human framework, a marketer's framework. And this is becoming a more common test, a much more common one where you are taking some control over the ad serving by pinning a few lines to each position. So you have this framework of related to ad group, calls to action, USPs, and authority statements, but using machine learning to let it learn and render different types of combinations to different users. And then you have theme testing. Theme testing could be headline 1, could be headline 2. In fact, you could pin everything if you want to. And we're really saying we're testing theme 1 versus theme 2. Prices, discounts, location, not location, brand, not brand, over 100,000 served versus on sale now, whatever you want. And if you want to learn this for a single ad group, you can set this up in one ad group, you're good to go. Or you can start labeling the ads. So if you label them, in this case, they're labeled apprentice, technician, craftsman, and master craftsman. So there's 4 labels across thousands of ad groups. And then you can use software or a pivot table to re-aggregate that data to see as a whole which of these labels, which applies to different themes, is doing the best across this entire segment. So when you're doing these multi-ad group tests, it's important to think about where you want to re-render the data, where you want to aggregate it. So if you do it across the entire account, which you can have a test across the entire account, you might set it up that way, but when you think about interpreting the data, you'd really want to look at brand versus non-brand separately. If you have some geographic-based campaigns, some not geographic campaigns, probably want to look at that data separately. If you're across multiple countries and you have a campaign per country, probably want to look at it at the campaign country level versus the entire account. So it's important when you're looking at cross ad group testing or multi ad group testing to think about where does it make sense to aggregate this data so that we're getting the same type of consumers, looking at these ads, clicking, buying from us. So our insight is applicable to that targeting method. But multi-ad group testing, really underused. It's your chance to really learn more about users. Are they price sensitive? Does location matter? Does shipping matter? So forth. So think about different testing methods. We've got single ad group testing, where we're putting 2, maybe 3 RSAs in an ad group. You can only have 3 RSAs in an ad group. And it gives you the best insights for the targeting method in that ad group. If you have really high traffic ad groups, it's one of your better methods to use because you have so much traffic. Usually for brand ad groups, unless your brand is pretty massive and you have a ton of brand ad groups, you generally want to just do single ad group for brands. You don't want to mess brand up and combine it with other types of data. Now, if you've done some multi-ad group testing and you want to sort of narrow down what you're looking at, then it's very good to use single ad group testing in those cases as well. Multi-ad group testing is better when you want insights across a segment. You're creating a lot of templated ads, or you don't have a lot of data. So you have so little data, you can't really do single ad group testing. By using multi-ad group testing, you can at least do some. Or if you want that sort of market research that gets distributed to other places in the company, good to use multi-ad group. So just sort of wrapping up and thinking about this. Machines are going to look at your assets based upon what you've given them and your potential pinning to create them. Right? Now, machines don't have great context. They don't really understand this is an authority statement. This is a unique selling proposition. This is a call to action. This is something related to the keywords. So if you're going to do unpinned RSAs, you want to be consistent in the asset usage. Same number of lines related to the ad group or calls to action, benefits, so forth. Now, as soon as you start pinning, you can break this rule. If you have one line related to the ad group pinned to headline 1, well, then you could have 8 calls to action pinned to headline 2, because the end ad rendered to the user is still going to be headline related to the ad group, call to action. Now, as you do this pinning, you're going to see your ad strengths decline. Don't worry about it, right? What we're really thinking about is pinning reduces total combinations. So instead of 47,000 combinations when we include headlines and descriptions, or 210 combinations when we just look at headlines, we're saying let's use 9 or 27 combinations. So we get better data density, which means the machine has less total options, overall better data, so we can make better decisions, right? But you still get to control the framework then. You can have that ETA experience, and ETAs did really well, saying headlines related to the ad group, call to action, authority, or supporting headline 2. So that's what pinning gets you. Right? You get a framework of limited options while still using machine learning. Now, when you think about testing responsive search ads, we want to use single ad group testing for finding the best ad within an ad group. Right? Now, that's important based upon, is it brand? Is it non-brand? How much data does this get? And then multi-ad group testing is best for really consumer insights or when testing large amounts of ad groups at a single time. But overall, responsive search ads, they're not worse than ETAs. And if you love the ETAs, you can pin them all. So don't think that RSAs are just worse than ETAs, because you can make the same thing you used to have. What RSAs give you are a lot more control in how you want to show ads. Do you want to rely completely on machine learning? Give it all kinds of assets and just step back. Do you want a framework of ads? Well, then create some pinning and add some assets to each type of pin. Do you want to just control headline 1 and nothing else? Right? You could pin some to headline 1, not pin anything else. So RSAs are better than ETAs, right? They're more flexible. But what you can't be scared of is looking at the ad strength and saying, my ad strength is going down. I need to give Google more control, right? The ad is the only part of your account a searcher sees, right? That's it. Searcher doesn't know your keywords, anything else. They only know your ad. So controlling the ad experience is a huge part of marketing, right? This is what shows why they're looking for you, why they should do business with you, why they should click and go to your website. So making these frameworks of RSAs and combining humans with machines generally does better than either one individually. And that's what these pinned RSA frameworks can really give you. All right, thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click the agenda link at the top of your screen to choose your next session.